welcome everybody to Integrate Yourself. We're your hosts, Allison Pillow and Maya Gottlieb. Today we're here with Ashley James. Ashley James is an entrepreneur, a coach, and a podcaster. Her podcast is called True Health with Ashley James, where she interviews holistic health experts and doctors of naturopathic medicine. Her website is learntruehealth.com. And through her podcast interviews, her expert guests teach listeners how to gain health naturally through holistic medicine, diet, supplemental nutrition, and lifestyle changes. Ashley makes sure that listeners learn natural medicine life hacks for gaining energy, better sleep, a boosted immune system, and overall feeling of awesomeness. I like that. Welcome, Ashley, to our show.
Thank you.
I just wanted to share a few things that I thought were really interesting about you, Ashley, is that you first became a massage therapist, and then you became a Reiki master after that, and then after that, she became a neurolinguistic programmer. She got into neurolinguistic programming, and then timeline therapy, which I really would like to know more about, and hypnosis and coaching.
I can help you with that.
And
yeah,
Maya and I have some experience with hypnosis, and that fascinates us so much. So we'd love to talk about that as well. But first, I'd love to hear more about you and have you share your journey with our audience today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
And I'm also a massage therapist, so I'm to hear your stories of that too. So
absolutely.
Just to jump in real quick, just to say, hey, to all the massage therapists out there.
A lot of us. My mom was a really strong, I was like independent woman, but she was in the 80s. She ran her own company. She started from scratch. She started with basically a phone book, and she cold called people, and she was a rep for a clothing line. She cold called people. This was like before the internet, right? Before cell phones. She cold called people, and she built her own $1 million business. And so I watched her growing up. I watched her put aside her health for her success. And then when her health caught up with her, little colds, would just drag her down. And then she would go to the MD, and the MD would give her prescription drugs like more antibiotics, 6 months of antibiotics to keep her on her feet. She developed candida, and I watched her push herself. She'd go to the gym every morning, and we ate the standard Canadian diet. I'm originally from Toronto, Canada, which is very similar. This is 1980s, very similar to the standard American diet. It was all the rage was low fat, which means high carbohydrate. And I just remember eating or drinking chocolate milk every day. I remember eating, cereal like Cheerios every day. It wasn't like we went out and tried to find junk food. And in fact, probably in Canada, we had less fast food and less access to fast food. So it was still more home cooked meals. But I was sick every day as a child, and just sickly, just tired all the time, sore throats every day. And my mom was sick too, so she brought herself and me to a naturopath. And I was 6 years old, and it totally changed our lives. We went off of all the sugary foods. We went on to a whole foods diet, and there was no word for it back then, but it would be more paleo style eating. And we took supplements, and I wasn't sick not once from age 6 to age 13. And when I was 13, I started to rebel, and I ate all the Halloween candy, and I ate all the cafeteria food, and I quickly gained weight, and my hormones were out of control. My mom stuck with it, and she stuck with it for a few more years, and then she went to the MD, and her health started going downhill when she started taking her advice from the MD again. And it was just amazing to see. Every time someone went to a naturopath, they'd get their health back. When they went to a medical doctor, they'd lose their health. There's no coincidence there. And I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome. I was told by an endocrinologist at age 19 that I'd never have kids.
Oh, wow.
I ended up developing fatty liver, type 2 diabetes, chronic adrenal fatigue. I gained 50 pounds a year, uncontrollable weight gain while I was dieting and exercising 5 days a week. And through this, though, I was very interested in massage. I was interested in massage because my mom would come home really tired at night as a child and just hand me the Carrie lotion, and I'd rub her feet. I was like 4 or 5 years old, rubbing my mom's feet just because I wanted to spend time with her, and all she wanted to do was rest after a really busy day. And I loved it, and I loved touching her and melting her stress away, and that gave me a sense of power in a good way. That feeling you get when you can touch someone and you can bring relief, and so I massaged my friends, and then of course I pursued the career because it was something that brought me so much joy. And in Canada, it is a more like a 3,000-hour program. It's a college program where we can work in rehab facilities and in hospitals. And I did that. When my mom passed away of liver cancer, it changed my direction. I changed my direction completely. I sort of lost myself, and out of that opportunity got to find myself. And that's when in 2005, I took all the trainings to become a trainer and master practitioner of neurolinguistic programming, timeline therapy, and hypnosis. And I've been doing coaching since, actually I've been doing coaching through Landmark Education first from 1999 to 2005. And then I was on staff at Landmark as well, and I did lots of coaching through them. And then in 2005, I started with corporate, actually going into businesses, because salespeople and managers are really fun to work with because they're highly motivated to get better results. And so I would do all these change techniques and help them to resolve limiting decisions and negative emotions from their past, which would affect their whole life and their health. And then they'd also get better sales. But what's really rewarding for me is working with people to get their health back. And so, and because I've been on a health journey my whole life, I lost my health because I started to rebel as a teenager, and I've been trying to gain it ever since. So about 7 years ago, I refound naturopathic medicine, and through working with naturopaths and holistic foods, healing foods, and supplements, I reversed my type 2 diabetes. I no longer have heartburn. I no longer have fatty liver. I no longer have polycystic ovarian syndrome, and we have a son that's going to be 3 next March.
Oh, congrats.
So
yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and I've lost about 50 pounds since the birth. So it is,
great.
it's health is a journey. Health is a skill that we develop. And I had to do a lot of emotional work around the fact that I'm not perfect yet. You know, when I started my podcast, I wasn't the perfect weight, right? I'm still not the perfect, I'm doing a health podcast and I don't look like what you would think. But I had to get over that because I have a mission to help people get healthy too. Yeah. And I've healed so much of my issues that I know I can help others. And naturopaths have helped me so much. I'm like, every time I sat down with the naturopath, they would sit down with me for between 60 and 90 minutes. What MD does that? They would sit down with me and teach me, sit down, almost like open up the textbooks and do diagrams and drawings and explain how everything works. And they really take the Latin root for doctors, docere, which means teacher. And so doctors are supposed to be our educators. They're supposed to teach us, not just hand us a pill.
Right.
And so interviewing these naturopaths, I started my podcast to interview these naturopaths to dive deep into this information. So to anyone who would like access to this information can gain it. And covertly, though, it was great because every time I interviewed a health expert, I improved my health. I learned so many things. And the big thing that from a lot of the guests has been a big takeaway has been listen to the symptoms of your body as though your body is speaking to you in the language of symptoms. Our emotional body cannot speak to us directly, so it speaks to us through our emotions, right? Mm-hmm. So our heart speaks to us through our emotions. Our body speaks to us through symptoms. And so listening, so almost all the guests I've had on has said this in one way or another, that, if you have a headache, don't just take a pill, like stop and go, what's going on? Like if you are your own doctor, then something as simple as a headache could be telling you that maybe your check engine light's coming on, maybe that you ate a food that your body's allergic to, or that you are dehydrated, or that you have tension. And sometimes physical pain can also be related to an emotional issue, which Dr. Johnny Sarno clearly laid out in his book Healing Back Pain, where he discovered that when we're upset emotionally and we don't resolve it, our body will actually make muscles go ischemic, which means that it'll make blood go shunt away from those muscles, almost like a Charlie horse. And so we have to listen to our body if we're in pain. That too is a symptom to look at and to see what's going on with my diet. What's going on? Do I have nutrient deficiencies? Do I have anything emotional going on? And if we don't listen to the whispers, we're going to get hit by the cosmic 2x4, because my mom got liver cancer, but there were symptoms years before that she could have paid attention to had she stopped to take a breath and listen to her body.
Yeah, we talk that, we agree, and we talk a lot about that in our show as well. How to listen to your body.
Yeah, we talk about that as a mindset or body awareness, just to have communication through all of it. You have to really take in what you're what you're feeling, how you're processing it, and where it's responding. So yeah, it's great.
Absolutely. And doing something like a food mood journal, where we pay attention to everything that goes into our mouth and how we feel about it. Do I feel grumpy right now? Do I feel happy right now? And how do we feel physically? What's our energy level? What's our sleep like? And if we do that for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we can look back and we can start to see a pattern. Oh wow, every time I stay up late with my cell phone playing some video game on my cell phone, the next day is totally wrecked because I got 2 hours less sleep. Maybe I need to put the cell phone down at 9 p.m. and let an evening kind of naturally progress to sleep instead of staying up late with my cell phone. So sometimes in the moment, we're not willing to admit that, because we're all like little brats inside that want what we want when we want it. But we also want better health, and sometimes that takes making the hard decisions. Something as simple as eating at a dinner table. A lot of people don't. A lot of people eat at their desk, or they will eat in their car, or they'll eat in front of the couch in front of their TV. And people consume between 200 and 500 calories extra a day on average if they eat distracted versus eating at a dinner table. So eating at a table with no distractions, no cell phone, and either being alone or being with your family can have you eat more consciously and start listening to your body, and it aids digestion. But people don't want to do that, right? Because they want what they want when they want it, because they're letting their little brat inside them control their life. And so we kind of have to, get our big girl pants on and go, what do we really want, right? And sometimes we have to make the hard choices where we don't get what we want in the now, which is called, emotional intelligence. But in the long run, we're going to have way better health. And sometimes when we do a food mood journal, we realize, wow, that habit of staying up late because I'm playing on my phone, wow, I really do that every night. I didn't realize how much sleep I'm losing. Right. And so then we can kind of come to terms with the habits that we are choosing to have that really deteriorate our health. And so that's why I love the food mood journal, because it allows us to get really straight with us, sort of like be our own Dr. Phil.
Right.
That's a good segue into hypnosis, and how most people think, oh, you're going to put me in hypnosis and maybe I won't fall or into it, or you can't make me out, however they're resistant or compliant to it. But in actuality, we're always in a hypnotic trance. And so when we don't pay attention to what we're doing in our daily habits and lifestyle, we wake up from that trance. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the hypnosis after Allison tells me what she wanted to say.
Oh, it's okay. No, I was just going to say we're also high on stress hormones. And so when you're high on stress hormones all the time, it's hard to get, it's like being addicted to it,
Right.
So it's like, how do you wind down? And I love that you actually teach people how to wind down and get calm, because that's so important for health.
Yes, absolutely.
It's crucial.
I was terrified of hypnosis. I was really interested in studying all this information because I started really diving into Landmark, actually before my mom died. But when my mom died, I dived heavily into it because I wanted an outlet for personal growth and development, and a way to know that I was grieving healthfully. Losing a parent is incredibly painful, and I was so young. I was in my early 20s, and she was my best friend, and so I felt like if I didn't do something, I'd go crazy, right? And so when I dived into it, I began to learn all this great stuff about personal growth. And then I had an experience with a practitioner of NLP, timeline therapy, and hypnosis, and it was incredible. But I was so afraid of my unconscious mind. I was so afraid of being put into a trance. I was afraid that I'd find out I was molested, or I'd have these like hidden memories come up, or maybe I'd find out I don't like myself. Like what's hidden in the darkness of our mind. Hollywood has done us no justice, right? Hollywood paints hypnosis as like this really weird thing. And you're right. We are always in a state of trance. We're actually going in and out of trance, and it's a natural part of our own brain waves. we can fall in the trance of marketing. So I use this example, like Kellogg's, for example, has been in your consciousness since you were born. And Kellogg's, I'm just using that as an example, Kellogg's is non-threatening to your psyche, is non-threatening to your the lower brainstem, that chimp brain, that part of you, that the survival mechanism part of you is threatened by new things. Right. So if there was this new brand of food or new, like all of a sudden, like Chia Pets became Chia Pudding overnight, and I felt, I was not going to try it for years. I was not going to try Chia Pudding. I'm like, this was a pet. This was a plant that you watered, and all of a sudden now it's something we eat. Like, I don't trust this, right? Because when something is new, we were cavemen for how many years? New equals potential poison, right? But familiar is healthy. So McDonald's does not threaten our psyche until, the granola hippie crunchy, people in us watched enough documentaries and realized that it wasn't. But Kellogg's, you were raised to see their marketing. You saw it every time, you're in the little cart, your mom's pushing you down the aisle, and you saw all the Kellogg's symbols. Unconsciously, Kellogg's has been programming you through all their commercials, their radio ads, their sponsorships, everything. You see the little Kellogg symbol, and you're comforted because since day one, you've seen this symbolism, right? So their food, therefore, is going to be non-threatening to you. You are under the trance. You have been hypnotized by their marketing. Same with pharmaceutical companies. Any company that does marketing repetitively has put you in their trance. And if you buy their products or you're loyal, like think about Apple, the people lining up in tents for days to buy a new iPhone, they're in the hypnotic trance of that marketing. Yeah. So the thing is, we can also be in the trance of negative beliefs about ourselves. I'm not good enough. I'm not loved. I'm not, just think about all the negative beliefs you have about yourself. I'm not good at math. Well, who says? When did you decide that? When you have a limiting decision and you live by it, you are in the trance of that limiting decision. Now you can have positive decisions about yourself. Like, I'm beautiful. I'm smart. I'm great at math. Maybe you have those decisions and you're in the trance of that. Your unconscious mind is run by that belief system. The thing with hypnosis is I can't make you go into trance. The people who go up on stage and do stage hypnosis are the ones that if you gave them 3 beers, they would have put the lampshade on their head and clucked like a chicken anyway. Yeah. Like the introverts don't get up on stage and do stage hypnosis. And I'm a trainer of hypnosis. I should know. I've performed stage hypnosis with people, and we're taught how to read the crowd and how to figure out while we're watching the crowd, how to figure out which ones are going to be the ones that stand up, because you can read the audience. Now, I don't like. It's not something I like to do, stage hypnosis. It's really fun. I recommend if anyone's interested in hypnosis, they should take a weekend training in it. And you end up learning that you develop a tool to connect with your unconscious mind. And that when you work with others, you're simply guiding them and they can choose whether whether they're going to guide themselves into that or not. But all hypnosis is self-hypnosis because it's always a choice. And also, I may help you through positive suggestions to help you shift your belief system. I can't make you be a bank robber if that goes against your values, right? But if you're ready to quit smoking, I use that as an example. If you're really ready to quit smoking, there's a lot of great techniques for smoking cessation. If you're really ready to stop being victimized by your past and you want to resolve the negative emotions and limiting decisions from your past, and where you want to create the powerful positive who you are in the now, then you're already ready and your unconscious mind is already in alignment with these changes. So all I'm doing is helping you to shed what isn't you anymore. And that's what hypnosis is.
Wow. Yeah, it's a great freeing concept, because if you really know, it's not as scary as, like you said, when you first start, you think, oh my gosh, the floodgates are going to come out and all my shit's going to come out, and then how am I going to control it all and pack it back in and be able to live, and because we're always afraid of what we don't know. And so when you find ways of tools to break it down, our favorite word, integrate it. That's that's what we really want to help people do. And it's just simply come into a state of neutrality and know that everything is all right. It always has been, always will be.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And the mind has safety mechanisms. The U.S. government I believe it was in the 50s, tried to figure out whether, so the MK Ultra, you've probably heard of.
Is that MK Ultra?
So the U.S. government tried to use hypnosis to convert, POWs. And that's because our POWs were converted. I think it was in Korea. Within like 3 days, our POWs were converted, and they thought, like, what did they do? What did they do in like 3 days? So they figured maybe hypnosis was one of them. They did all these kinds of experiments, and what they ultimately realized that hypnosis, in order to make hypnosis brainwash someone, they had to starve them, sleep deprive them, and give them LSD. But those three things without hypnosis would probably brainwash the person to begin with. And so as long as you're not, starving yourself, sleep deprived and on LSD, then hypnosis is completely safe for you.
Yeah.
Well, we don't really offer LSD, but people have done psychedelics and kind of brought in the mushrooms, but we really add just the regular mushrooms, button mushrooms, to help clean the gut. It's very helpful. But
nice.
Right. Well, the thing I like about the neurolinguistic programming and the hypnosis is it really helps to aid the brain to kind of repattern itself. So, like if we're in a negative feedback loop with our thinking, or we've learned something or had some traumatic event happen when we're younger, that can really help retrain the brain. Just like we train our body when we train in the gym, or we train our digestive system when we're changing our nutrition, it's all kind of the same deal. So that's the way I like to think about it, and it feels more positive that way instead of like a manipulative thing. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. And you're correct in that the brain, when we are on a certain habit, so if we have a habit of focusing on what we don't want and a habit of anxiety, for example, then we have neurons that will always fire with each other, and those neurons, those neural pathways become ingrained. Sort of like if you looked at a field and everyone who was walking to the other side of the field always took the same path, they would wear down the grain, and so then eventually you'd see a path. Whereas if you wanted to take a new path, so you're like, you know what, I don't, it's so easy for me to think of the worst case scenarios all the time. I'm this person that always goes to pessimism, and I see how it's affecting my health. I want to change. Okay, so you're ready to change now. There's techniques I can teach you. And at first, it's like you see this path over here. It's the easier path to go down, and the worn path, because it's in your neurology. It's the neurons that are used to firing together, which are the negative thinking, for example. Right. And now you want to go positive thinking. Well, at first it's like, okay, I gotta be a trailblazer and pioneer through this new path. And at first it's difficult. It's like stroke victims relearn things, like, part of their brain explodes, and all of a sudden now they can't move their arm. But 6 months later, they can move. In fact, when I worked in rehab, I worked with a 96-year-old woman who had 5 strokes, and she couldn't move one side of her body, and she was in a wheelchair. In 6 months of working with her, she was able to walk with a walker and throw a ball across the room and hit the one of the doctors in the butt, because she had a crush on him. And so
never ends,
right? Exactly. But the brain can rewire itself. So if you have a stroke and you can't move your arm, the brain is going to learn how to go around that injury so that it can rewire. Yeah. So if you can rewire a major trauma in your brain so that you can use your arm again, you can certainly rewire your brain so that your default is no longer pessimism. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean it changes your personality. If we look up the makeup of your personality is based on your memories, on your values, on your unconscious filters, like whether you're introvert or extrovert. But all these things are malleable. People can go from being a Republican to a Democrat in their lifetime. They can go from being an introvert to an extrovert in their lifetime. It doesn't mean you're different as a person. It means that your human experience is shifting so that you have a more broader expanse of what it is to be human. So I would say that if you want to enjoy life more, then look into how to rewire your brain so that you're getting the most out of your life, rather than always walking down that same path Because when we get stuck in that habit
Yeah.
of those old habits, when we're rigid, we don't have behavioral flexibility, a disease sets in. We see that those who have more flexibility of behavior, and more flexibility in their body, in their emotional body, in their mental body, can survive.
When we start to think about that, that there's possibilities that we have maybe shut down because we've been programming ourselves into a sense of like, we had a high expectation because we judged ourselves, put ourselves in a comparative mode, and then took that expectation way beyond, it's like having a big goal and not chunking it down into steps every day to kind of help you progress to that goal. And when you kind of find that you can really break things down, you got to get to that part of that's the rewiring part. That's the part where the neurons and stuff start to get that practice that you need. Okay, so you wanted to do this goal, so this is the baby step to that goal. And it's just like fitness, it's just like changing your diet, it's just in programming the brain is helpful as bring any part of the body. So this is a great way of knowing how there is more possibility than there is that fear part.
Yeah, and I wanted to add that, it does translate into your body chemistry. So if you have a negative outlook on life, then you are going to find negative health effects from that will be created, just because it will affect digestion. It will affect your overall hormonal balance. So that's really important to realize as well. It makes it more valuable to learn the more positive. And also, like you said, Ashley, makes life more fun. So who doesn't want more fun, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And so I'm coming out with this course I've been working on for last year. It's an accumulation of everything that I've been doing with my clients since 1999 and also since 2005 with my trainings. My husband finally encouraged me enough that I finally did it. I put it all down. It took me a year to do it and put everything out. So it's this workshop. And in it, both of you just touched on things that I teach. I actually teach how to make changes. So we want to make changes like, okay, I want to go to bed earlier, but how? Like, right, because we're ingrained. We've got this one pattern in our mind that's so used to that one way. And there's something called habit stacking, and it's utilizing old habits to make new habits. So I teach how to do that, and I actually give homework in my workshops so that people walk away actually having success with every single tool that I teach. Another thing is I really go over in the course the role that anxiety and stress play on the body, on digestive health, on mental health, on blood sugar, and just the list goes on and on, that diseases can arise from too much stress.
Absolutely.
And how to turn off that stress response. Being a massage therapist, you know very well that the body has that switch between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic autonomic nervous system response. What not a lot of people know is when you go from rest and digest to fight or flight, so when you switch over into stress response, what's happening is the body's shunting blood away from all the non-essential components of your body. So away from your organs, away from your immune system, which most of it surrounds your digestive tract. But it also shunts blood away from the logic centers of your brain. So when you're in stress mode, you cannot think clearly. You're actually not supposed to think clearly, because if you're in a house fire and you're on the second floor, and you had the logic centers of your brain activated, you'd be like, well, should I jump out that window or should I jump out that window? Well, if I jump out that window, I'm going to hit the rose bush, and then you're dead because you've been standing in a fire too long, overthinking it.
Yeah. That makes so much sense, actually. Yeah, that makes so much sense.
The problem is once we're in stress mode, now we've sort of lost our way to think ourselves out of it. Like Einstein said, you can't get your way out of a problem, the same problem with the same thinking that got you there, right? So when you're in stress mode, the body is shunting blood away from your logic centers of your brain. So now you are in a mode that is reactive on purpose, because we're supposed to react to get away from the bear, to get away from the fire, to get away from the danger. But that was great 10,000 years ago. It's not great now, because now we get stress response when we're paying our bills. We're supposed to, and we want to think clearly when we're paying our bills, like, or when we're, going to work, or when we're driving, times when we really need the logic centers of our brain. Look at how many accidents there are from like crazy drivers because of road rage. Road rage happens because they go into stress response and the logic centers of their brain no longer have a hold of their control, a hold of their decision making. So now our decision making is coming from a reptilian brain instead of the logic centers of our brain. So I teach a lot of techniques for getting ourselves constantly out of stress mode and how to integrate that, so that when you get in your car and you're driving and someone cuts you off, you don't go into stress mode. That you can stay in a state of relaxation. So I'm a trainer of NLP, and and we did extensive, like, I don't know if you know, no one knows what it takes to be a trainer. Okay, that's like people know. It's like an 8-hour exam and 3 live exams, like 3 in-person live exams and a giant exam. It's not like, oh, here's your certificate because you were here this weekend. I spent 90 days doing these trainings to become a trainer. And we learn how to go into in Hawaii it's called hakalau. Hakalau, we also call it the learning state, but it's where you use 180-degree periphery. So right now I can see my fingers on either side. Oh. So I have 180-degree periphery. When you open up do it. Put your hands beside you and just wiggle your fingers and see if you can see your fingers. Can you see your fingers?
Yeah. I can.
Great. Okay. Keep your body and keep your awareness in periphery while you stare at the camera.
Yeah.
And what you're
that's much better. Yeah.
So what that does, tunnel vision is actually associated with anxiety and fear and the stress response. So you cannot be in periphery and be in the sympathetic autonomic nervous system response.
Oh, wow.
When you get yourself into periphery, you do this when you're studying, and then when you go write the exam, you also get yourself in periphery. So if you learn things, called the learning state, if you learn things in periphery, you still are staring at something. It's not like you're like making your eyes go fuzzy. Like, you still can see something, but you're also aware of your periphery. This opens up a whole set of neurology that integrates learning.
That is cool.
Yeah. So that's what I do. So I'm able to I can see both of you because you're on either side, because I have my camera on a little stand. And I can see both of you in my periphery, and I'm just staring at the camera. So.
Well, real quick before we get started, it's interesting because I just I don't know if you know about Z Health, but they're all into neurology and stuff. And so I just took a course, and it's so much about the vision and the vestibular and how it affects the proprioceptor. But like literally why certain people can and cannot do that peripheral part, why they lose their eyesight on gaze. So like all that takes a lot of like energy. And so this whole concept of how NLP utilizes that makes it so much more it makes more sense of why people can and cannot do stuff. And it's like so helpful when you start helping people. You're like, oh, that's why I can't concentrate, or that is why I sit myself down and I just can't stop doing something, right? I have to like focus, but then you get all stressed out and stuff. But anyways, I digress. We can go back.
That's actually great, because what happens is when we develop anxiety, a lot of times people will end up having fear of anxiety. So it's like, let's say I'm sitting down and I'm studying for exam that's happening tomorrow, right? And I can't focus, right? Because and I can't focus could be too high blood sugar, too low blood sugar. I ate red dye number 5, like something I'm allergic to. It could be not enough sleep. It could be a nutrient deficiency. I mean, it can be that you are you're not in that learning state where you're aware of your periphery. There's so many reasons why we can't focus, but we sit down and we realize we can't focus, and that becomes a negative feedback loop, because then we go, oh my God, I can't focus. And then because we're meaning-making machines, we then say, I can't focus means I'm going to fail this exam. I'm going to fail this exam. I'm going to fail school. I'm going to end up homeless and dead. I'm going to die.
Right. Yes.
And that's where we go. That's where we go. We really do this worst case scenario. And it's like all because we sat down and we noticed that for 3 seconds we couldn't focus. And that means, oh, I can't focus right now. Oh, I can't concentrate. I have brain fog. That means I won't be able to study all night long. That means I'm going to fail my exam tomorrow. That means, and we just go off.
And
And it's
then
that
we may come in and start going, I've got to make myself. I've got to make myself. And then the stress builds from
because
there and
the
there.
making ourselves means that it's a feedback loop where we start to notice that problem more and more. If you focus on like the pain in your toe, like, oh my God, my toe's painful. Oh my God, and then
I've got gout. My toe's falling off.
Yeah, you could go
really build
the
and build and
imagination.
build. But it becomes end up becoming a fear of the future, and then it becomes a fear of anxiety.
Oh,
Because we start out with some anxiety, but then oftentimes people will end up becoming afraid. I just worked with a woman who, when she goes to work, she has to walk down a steep set of stairs that sometimes she falls down. So she ends up having anxiety every time she needs to walk down the stairs. So then she develops anxiety walking up the stairs. So then she develops anxiety going to work. So now she has anxiety all the time, because her anxiety of going down the stairs turned into a fear of her anxiety. So she's at home about to go to work. She starts developing a fear of the anxiety she's going to have because she has created it as a habit.
Wow.
So we can end up creating anxiety about anxiety. And then sometimes people call that generalized anxiety. So I have an amazing technique I'd like to teach your listeners.
Sure.
It works 100% of the time. I actually, the first time I taught this to a client in 2005, she came to me for some really severe stuff, major back pain and guilt, and some issues from her past she wanted to resolve. And kind of like anxiety was this thing on the side. What she didn't tell me was that she was on 2 medications for anxiety. And so I taught her this technique in addition to everything else I did with her. And she came back to me and said she's off all her meds. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second. Did you talk to your doctor? Like, I don't want to get sued or something. So, but I've had a lot of clients tell me that, with the assistance of their doctor, I didn't recommend they do this. They have to, talk to their doctor about it. They get off their meds. They no longer need anxiety medication because this one technique is incredibly powerful. Recently, I was asked to give a talk at Unity Church and teach this technique in front of about 200 people. I taught this technique, and I asked who here, and this is Sunday morning, 11 a.m., who here has anxiety? And like 97% of the room put up their hands. I said, great. Okay, great. Let's get rid of it. And I taught the exercise. And then afterwards I said, okay, who still has anxiety? One person put up his hand, and there's 2 qualifiers I'm also going to teach you. I walked him through the 2 qualifiers, and his anxiety was gone. Wow. So I have a 100% success rate with this. And I love teaching it. So I'm going to teach you guys this, and this is only one of many techniques that I teach in my course that's going to be released very soon. And the link to that course is going to be in the show notes of this show, I know, and in the description of this show. So if you guys want to check it out, you can. So there's both of you here. I can work with both of you. I can work with one of you. And then the listeners or the viewers can follow along. Okay. So do either one of you have anxiety about something that's coming up in the near future?
I do.
Okay, great. And you don't have to share what it is for this technique to work. So when you think about this event that's coming up in the near future, can you feel anxiety right now when you think of it?
Yeah. There's 2 things I'll ask. One of them is the first part of the anxiety is not true because it hasn't materialized into what the fear is. But the other part is like there's potential that could create itself. So like I'm creating a lot of anxiety about what could be. So I don't really have like this one event that's going to create it. Is that going to still stay the same? Like, do I have to have like an event that is really, no,
it doesn't, it does. No, this works. So, my languaging for you will be a little bit different because you're describing more of a generalized anxiety because you're not really sure if there's going to be a deadline. Like, let's say, for example, you're worried you can get cancer. If you're worried you can get cancer, that could happen when you're 99 years old, right? So if you have anxiety about something that has no deadline, right? I do have a way of teaching you this technique. Does the thing you have anxiety around have a deadline?
It affects the outcome of what potentially I could do. So like, let's just say it out loud. So it's like having enough money for some event that I want to attend. So
the event has a date.
Yes.
Got
And
it. So there's an end
I'm
date to this.
experiencing a slowness in the business that I've created. So a lot of what I'm now going on is like, be calm. This is just normal. Everything's going really well. But in the back of the mind, there's a part of me that's saying, how are we going to pay for this? Where are we going to go with that? You know, is this an intuitive like thing to go to?
Okay. I'm so glad you said that. A lot of people will read their anxiety as intuition. It is not intuition. Dear God, it is not intuition. This is not your gut telling you not to go there. Oh my gosh. Okay. You're going to love this technique.
Okay.
Anxiety
I'm ready.
is not your intuition or your gut. But your gut is communicating to you. So I'll explain all that. So what I'd like you to do, first I'd like to know on a scale of 1 to 10, how much anxiety, so 10 being like the worst ever and 1 being minimal, how much anxiety do you feel right now in the moment? So listeners, go ahead and just admit to yourself like, oh, it's a 6 or it's a 3 or it's an 8. What is your number? And for you guys, what's your number? What do you feel right now in your body when you think about this event?
So I'll say 8.
Okay.
Because why it's an 8 is because the pattern that I've lived seems to be evolutionary coming to fruition, and that's what I'm seeking out to find. So I'm looking for those trails that this has happened before. This is what's always going to happen. That kind
yes.
of
thing. Okay. Oh, I love it. You're like the perfect client wrapped into one. This is great. We could be here all day. This is so much fun. Okay, and how about you? Do you have any? Do you have a specific number?
I would say a 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I'm so cheerful about this. It's just
this is awesome. I love this.
This is your passion.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Okay. All right, great. So I want you guys to close your eyes, and for listeners and viewers, as long as you're not driving, or watching a 2-year-old, you can close your eyes. You can do this technique with your eyes open, but it's a lot more fun with your eyes closed. So I want you to go ahead and close your eyes. And what I'd like you to do is imagine that your entire life is like a highway, so like a big timeline. Your future's in front of you, your past is behind you. And I want you to float up above now and float 15 minutes past the successful completion of the event and look down on 15 minutes past the successful completion of the event. Where's your anxiety?
It's gone. Relief is what I'm feeling.
Okay, is it 100% gone?
I feel pretty joyful right now.
Great. Okay, you can come back to now. So most people, it's that fast. And I'll unpack this whole thing later. Do you still have any anxiety?
I have, yes, maybe a 2. It's
okay.
More of I couldn't get the full picture of what it felt like. Okay,
so there's 2 things that happen when there's still anxiety left. You didn't focus on 15 minutes past the successful completion. Sometimes people just imagine the completion, and it's still the way that it's like, I'm sitting at home because I didn't get to go to that event, or the money didn't come in. Like you may have still been you focus on the completion, but you may not have seen the successful completion. Mm-hmm. And the second reason why people still have anxiety, if they still do, is that there was a deeper root issue. Mm-hmm. So is it that you didn't visualize 15 minutes past the successful completion, or do you think that you have a deeper something that's still farther out in the future that you're anxious about?
Ooh, that's a good question. When I was in it, I saw the event, but then it was almost hard to get 15 minutes out. Like it was.
So where would you be at the end of the event? Would you be driving back to the airport? Would you be hanging out with some friends who you met at the event? Like, what would you do 15 minutes past? Is this like a workshop or a concert? Like, what is this event?
Yeah, there's a workshop, and then
So what do you do 15 minutes after a workshop's over? Are you like packing up your bag in the hotel? Like, what do you do 15 minutes after a workshop?
That was exactly what I couldn't get to. I couldn't think of what I do in a regular work. Like I just took a workshop, and I now see that when you're starting to talk. But when I was in that moment, it was like I forgot. So it takes practice because like I said, some people visualize the actual event. Mm-hmm. So what you want to do is you want to take yourself 15 minutes after the event. So if it was a court date, you are walking back to your car, high-fiving your friend or whatever, right? Like, what are you doing to celebrate 15 minutes after the success of the event?
Now, some people go, well, wait a second, this isn't real. I'm making this up. Yes, but you know what? You were making up the failure too.
True.
But we visualize failure all the time, and that does not set us up for success for many reasons. One being that part of our lower brain, which is part of the unconscious mind, the part of the unconscious mind that controls what we perceive consciously. It's called the reticular activating system, and it filters out millions of bits of information every second to where we're only aware of less than 1% of all the information coming in through all your 5 senses. And so the reticular activating system will focus on and bring to the conscious mind what we want to focus on. So if we are focusing on being abused, every time someone's mean to us, we will see it. And every time someone's nice to us, we will negate it. If you're shopping for a new Subaru, all of a sudden every second car is a Subaru. Like they just pop out of everywhere, right? If you just bought a red sweater, it's like you look around and everyone else is wearing a red sweater. Like things that you are seeking for. I don't know if you ever noticed this, but whatever you're seeking for, all of a sudden you start seeing everywhere. And that is like let's say you just got turned on to yoga, and all of a sudden you look around and everyone else is doing yoga. And it's just because once you are aware of something, your reticular activating system will show you what you're choosing to focus on. And that was part of survival. Imagine if you're looking for apples and you're hunting in the woods looking for apples. Your reticular activating system is going to help you negate all the other information and just seek out apples. Or if you're hunting a deer, your reticular activating system is going to help you focus on the sights and the sounds and the smells to help you find that deer. So it's part of our survival. But also when we focus on what we don't want to have happen, our reticular activating system will help us see and find and achieve what we don't want to have happen. And that's one of the reasons why we experience anxiety. See, anxiety is a message from our unconscious mind to focus on what we want. And what I mean by that is, I'm imagining something negative happening. Now, I'm sure you guys have discussed, I'm sure your listeners know that there's a mind-body connection, that the mind cannot tell the difference between what is imagined and what's real. There's been a lot of studies on this. You could go watch The Walking Dead, which I love the plot, but cannot watch because anytime a zombie jumps out, I am like sleepless all night long. Like my heart is through the, my adrenaline is through the roof. I'd love to watch it edited. Like, can you just edit out all the zombies and put like little like happy people with smiley faces, and I'll watch that show. But the second a zombie comes out, I am like, I'm gone. And so I know I'm safe. I'm in my home. I know zombies don't exist. And yet my body is reacting as though zombies are actually threatening my life right now. When you imagine something happening in the future, like if you imagined yourself getting into a car accident, I bet you could raise your heart rate right now, sitting here safely in your seat. You could raise your heart rate. You could work yourself up because you're imagining something life-threatening happening to you, something negative. Now, we also perceive life-threatening things as failing an exam, not making enough money, like things that don't seem related to life-threatening. But remember, our mind goes, I'm going to fail the exam, I'm going to fail school, I'm going to be homeless, I'm going to be dead. Like that's, our mind goes very quick to either this is Kellogg's and this is familiar and safe because it's been around me my whole life and it's non-threatening, or this is highly threatening because it's going to threaten my survival and it's going to threaten my ability to have shelter and food, and then I'll end up dead. Or it could be social. If I am that's why bullying is such a hard thing for people to deal with, because when we are not accepted into the tribe, being rejected from the tribe means death. Right. Because for how many millennia we were living in we had to live in the tribe to survive. We weren't lone wolves. And so there's social interactions that lead to anxiety as well. Because when we focus on what we don't want to have happen, so if you just imagine some worst case scenario right now in your mind, you can create a physical response, and then out of that, an emotional response of anxiety. Your adrenal glands pump out adrenaline, your cortisol levels go up, your body now shunts blood away from the logic centers of your brain, so you can't think logically through this. You're having a physical sensation in your body, and that helps to further solidify the fact that anxiety is real. I can feel it in my body right now, therefore it's real. Yeah. Therefore, this threat is real. So the best thing that we can do is we have to cut it off somewhere. So this technique allows us to immediately cut it off at the source. Now, this technique is for acute situations. So when you feel anxiety right now, It could be a 1 out of 10. It could be like, I'm worried I'm not going to get to the bank on time to deposit my check. And it's really like a 2 out of 10 anxiety because I'll be able to take a snapshot of it and the deposit will get there tomorrow. It's not a big deal, but I'm rushing through traffic and I think I might not get there on time. So I'm kind of feeling a little anxious about it. You can do this technique. Imagine yourself 15 minutes after depositing your check. Now, listen, it doesn't mean you're going to get to the bank on time. But if you are calm, if you now have the logic centers of your brain fully oxygenated and in charge, you're likely to make better decisions getting yourself to the bank. You're not going to get into an accident. You're not going to flip someone off. Or at least you're going to be calm getting there. Whether or not you actually get there on time, you're going to enjoy you enjoy your time getting there. And then you're going to enjoy the rest of your day, because as long as you keep yourself out of stress response and focusing on what you want to have happen instead of what you don't want to have happen, you're now in the rest and digest response. Your logic centers of your brain are working it, and you're not thinking about life-threatening issues. Right. For your specific issue where you're thinking the money's coming in too slow and I'm not going to be able to make this workshop, and this workshop means a lot to me, your mind's probably saying, if I don't make this workshop, I'm going to somehow end up unsuccessful and a cat lady, and then I'm going to end up homeless and dead. Like this is where our mind kind of goes, right? And it's like, listen, you could miss this workshop. It's not the end of the world, but our mind will go that way, because our mind is like very black and white when it comes to survival. Either something's going to threaten us or it's not. And if it's questionable, it's a threat. Yeah. Because it's not like, oh, there's a kitty, a giant fluffy animal that I don't know what it is. I'm just going to start petting it because it looks friendly. No. We avoid things that might threaten our lives, right? And we only deal with the familiar. And this is like all coming from survival. And that's where our anxiety comes from. So what I'd like you to do is start changing your relationship to anxiety. Anxiety is no longer this thing to fear. Like I said before, people will develop anxiety about having anxiety. Oh my gosh, I have anxiety when I go to work. And I'm going to have anxiety about having anxiety, because anxiety is a fear of the future. So I'm developing anxiety about potentially having anxiety, right? In the future. So what we can do
also, sorry to interrupt, but is it also what it means to you? Because a lot of what we've studied with some other teachers, one of them is a holistic coach that has training in hypnosis. And one of the things he likes to do is break things down into meaning. So like if you, say my meaning is, it's like you said, I won't be able to go to the workshop, but is it really going to mean that I'm going to die? No, it means that the same program that I have underneath, maybe I'm not adequate enough, or I'm not a good.
I totally agree with you right there. But in the moment when you're having anxiety, that doesn't talk you out of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're dealing with, you're in whether, okay, people, I've had this recently with a coaching client where she said, I told her like stress is one of her big issues. And I explained why. And she's like, but I don't feel stress. So I don't think stress is an issue. I don't feel stress. And I'm like, stress is not an emotion. People have gotten this all wrong. Stress is not an emotion. Stress is, your body going into sympathetic nervous system response because it is in survival mode, and that wears down your body, and that causes high blood pressure, lack of sleep, lack of digestion, lowered immune system, inability to create healthy new cells, like just on and on, inability to have healthy sex hormones. And so many diseases can come of that, right? Mm-hmm. So stress is not an emotion. So when you're driving to the bank and you're a little bit anxious because you don't know whether you're going to get there on time, even though it's just a little bit of anxiety, you're in stress response. A little bit is still stress. It's still in stress response. So we want to get you out of stress response all the time. When you're in stress response, you are, it's hard to talk yourself out of it, because what you're trying to do is use the logic centers of your brain to tell your chimp brain, to tell your reptilian brain that everything's okay. Your reptilian brain will override your logic brain, because your reptilian brain is, no, I'm keeping this body alive. You can go make money and go watch movies or whatever. You can do all the logic centers stuff. I'm keeping us alive. I'm in charge right now. So we really need to shut that off. And how we reassure the reptilian brain, the logic, the chimp brain, is by stopping imagining what you don't want to have happen, because that's just to the body and to the mind, it is as real as though it's actually happening to you right now. And start imagining the successful completion. Now, after you've done that, and now you've got your logic center, you've got the logic brain running you again, now you can start to analyze all you want. You can unpack it, and you can go, what is it about not making it to this workshop that has me feel so threatened? What is it that, is it that I think that I don't have all the skills I need to succeed and I just need to go get more skills? Maybe that's a limiting belief I have about myself. Maybe it's a good thing I don't go to this workshop, because maybe it means I need to do a personal inventory of all my skills and really acknowledge that I have all these great skills and I can just go and keep fostering them and I don't need a workshop, right? So it could end up in a positive dialogue where you really realize that you have some negative beliefs about yourself and you can let those go and you can work on, creating positive new habits and positive beliefs. But in the moment when you have anxiety, you can't talk yourself out of it. It's like, right. Talking a scared dog out of being scared. No, take the threat away from the dog. Now right. You can, talk to the dog. So that's why I'm saying is that the first thing you need to do is stop focusing on what you don't want to have happen. Part of that is language, what we say to ourselves. And my example is that when I grew up in Canada, every year I'd slip on the ice, I'd fall, and I'd break my tailbone. Incredibly painful.
Ow.
So I wanted to avoid that, obviously. When I first learned this technique and I was still living in Canada, I went to walk out in February and it was a skating rink, from my door to the car. And I started feeling myself slip, and I realized that I caught myself because by the time I was a practitioner of NLP, I became, really conscious of all of my self-talk. And what I realized is my entire life I'd been saying to myself, I don't want to fall, I don't want to fall, I don't want to fall, I don't want to slip. We think that that's enough, but our unconscious mind can't hear a negation. Excuse me. Our unconscious mind can't hear a negative directly. In fact, the unconscious mind only observes the object or the subject of the verb of the issue. So if you're imagining yourself not falling, you say, I don't want to fall, your mind actually just goes, fall.
Oh.
Right. Fall. And so your body and your mind are actually lining up with falling. So I stood there for a moment because I'd never tried to think of what's the opposite of not wanting to fall. Like, how do I state that in the positive? And it seemed really weird. And it was just like, I physically felt my brain, like smoke coming out of my ears, because my brain was so used to going down this one track. And all of a sudden I had to trailblaze a new pattern for my brain to work out. So I had to go, okay, I want to remain erect. I want to walk safely to my car. And then I imagined bear claws coming out of my feet. Oh. And every year since then, I have since always walked safely on ice. I've never fallen. I have since never broken my tailbone, because I catch myself anytime I'm on ice. And this happened a few days ago. I was on ice. I started slipping and I started laughing. And I got really excited, whereas I used to have major anxiety about this. I just started laughing because I heard my self-talk going, I'm remaining erect, I'm safe, I'm standing on the ice, I have bear claws on my feet. And so it is very powerful, our visualization and our self-talk, our internal self-talk about a situation. So if you say, I don't want to miss this workshop, you're imagining yourself missing the workshop. If you say, whatever you don't want to have happen, state it in the positive. So make sure your languaging is always stated in the positive. This also really works with children. Actually, children learn this technique so much faster. And like I just worked with a girl who, she's 12 or 13 years old. It totally changed her life.
Wow.
And because imagine you take from a preteen, you take anxiety away from a preteen. I mean, that's incredible. She's unstoppable now. And languaging and focusing on what you want instead of what you don't want. When you talk to your kids, instead of saying, don't do blah, 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 right? Well, you're just reinforcing what you didn't want them to do. Instead, tell them what you want to do. And if you have, like employees also, if you have to tell an employee what not to do, always follow it up with what you do want them to do. And some people say, well, shouldn't they just know that? No, you're talking to their unconscious mind. For children and for employees and for your spouse and for yourself, if you're going to state something in the negative, I don't want you to slam that door. Instead, could you please close it quietly? Always follow it up with what you do want them to do, because now they're ending your sentence in what you want them to imagine. You're implanting that image in their mind, because language creates images. Our language is actually a bunch of images, and that's the language of the brain is images. So you're speaking to them in images, and that's why this technique is also so powerful.
That's super cool.
Go ahead,
Oh,
Allison.
I was just going to say, add to that, that that sounds like it'd be really super helpful for people going through a lot of pain or post-injury. I've worked with a lot of people with back pain, and they continue to walk like they're in pain even when they're not anymore. And so that's a really important thing for them to not do anymore. Walk like you really feel good, because or like people with low energy walk really crouched over, like they're already old, and it's like, no, start walking like you feel good, like you're ready to go, like you've got energy, and match what
yes.
you're kind of feeling. Otherwise the body language will kind of take over the mind. In a way, the mind starts thinking the way the body is kind of going towards too. It's kind of I guess it just kind of feeds on each other. So yeah.
Absolutely, it does. And in my course, I actually teach this and why that works.
Yeah.
Physiology. So if you're wherever you are, just pull your shoulders back and put your chin up. So you guys try it now. Like, pull your shoulders back, put your chin up, and smile. Even if you don't feel like smiling, and listeners do this, viewers do this, smile, pull your shoulders back, and lift your chin up. And just do this and take some deep belly breaths. Take some deep, expansive breaths while you're here listening or watching. And you'll notice that your state changes. State and physiology are interconnected. They're anchored, like the Pavlovian response, in which they discovered that emotions can be anchored to a stimulus. The stimulus is a very specific feeling. Your proprioceptors, so all of the sensation of every joint and where the joint is in relationship to your body and gravity. So when you pull your shoulders back and lift your head up and even smile, you're stimulating, just like the Pavlovian response, you're stimulating emotions, your state, that is in association with that physiology. Likewise, you could hunch your shoulders, put your head down, and frown, and you'll begin to feel lower energy and kind of sad.
Right.
So even in times of if you're sad, or if you're low energy, I'm sure you've heard of the hero pose, where people stand like this and put their make fists and put the fists on your hips and stand looking up like a hero. And you do that. There's a whole TED talk about it. But if you do that long enough, you change the neurochemicals in your body. Well, NLP, we've been teaching this since the 60s in NLP, that your state and physiology are interconnected, and they're also interconnected with your internal representation. Your internal representation is a combination of your self-talk and the self-visualization. So we made an internal representation when I asked you to focus 15 minutes past the successful completion. Now, there's all those three combined, which are all interconnected, and they all affect each other. The three of them is what gets your behavior. Your behavior is what gets your results in life. How do you change your results in life? Let's say, I'm bad at school. Okay, well, how do you change that? You gotta change your state, you gotta change your physiology, and you gotta change your internal representation. So your internal representation would be stop saying you're bad at math. Right. Stop saying you're bad at school. Start saying positive things about yourself. And it's kind of the fake it till you make it thing. Start having visualizations of you getting A's, of you getting great grades. Have visualizations of yourself having really positive success with teachers and with studying. Imagine, visualize this, because someone who believes they're a bad student only sees themselves as a bad student, has never invested any time in imagining this future of them as a good student, right? Right. They've only imagined themselves always being a bad student. So they've basically programmed themselves into their own box. Like I did, I was told in school that I had a learning disability. I didn't learn to read till grade 2. And it was it's very interesting. I'm highly intelligent, and I know that, and I'm an autodidact. I can teach myself anything. I taught myself how to do video editing and audio editing and how to build websites, years ago. Yeah. And the thing is, though, that if I had stuck with what the teachers told me, that this idea that I'm a bad student, that I have a learning disability, right? And I had not realized that so I had to let go of those old belief systems and realize that I'm incredibly intelligent and start visualizing myself and seeing myself as incredibly intelligent. So many people were told when they were kids that they were something. You're not good at soccer, or you're bad at sports, and they take that on as a belief system, and their belief system is part of their internal representation. So now their state and their physiology join that belief system that they're not good in sports, And then, of course, their behavior is not being good in sports. So then their results in life is not being good in sports. Same thing goes for anything.
Yeah.
If you want to be good at something, you got to start by removing any of those belief systems that are controlling your internal representation about whether you're good at it or not.
Yeah.
Because who's to say?
We don't realize those are actually what people think of themselves. They're projecting onto us. Yeah.
Oh, true. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's not really, yeah. Go ahead, Maya.
One of the things that I appreciate with all what you said is, we've touched base on a lot of these issues, and we've taken a little bit of accountability of where we got programmed, what we took upon ourselves to talk about in our own self-talk. And then, like, when I was bringing up the meaning of it, was that part of breaking down how that all started. And one of the things I loved the most about it was when we went to Tony Robbins and experienced his, full-fledged on, 10,000 people in one room. And to be able to engage and everybody get all coordinated into what, NLP is about, like really helping yourself unravel the negative talk and bringing back the positive. It was a reminder of how quickly we all just need these stories to keep us familiar. And when we want to change, we actually have to look at the other side of us that doesn't want to change. And it's funny how you think you're finished one thing, you think you've kind of organized yourself in a way to really understand your patterns. And the greatest part about it is that there's always some window that came in, because like in the example you gave, I was thinking about it and I thought, oh, wow, this really opened me up to another moment of something else. So there's, these unravelings that come with just taking a moment to see, what have I talked to myself into? What have I need to untalk myself out of? So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Ashley, for being on the show. We really appreciate it so much. We had a great time. If you want to check out Ashley's podcast, you can go to learntruehealth.com. I'll put a link on there, and I'll just have Ashley just share with you guys how to find her when she launches her new program. Are you just going to put it on your website?
I'm going to give you a link.
Okay.
What I'd actually like to do is I'd like to give you affiliate commission for anyone that signs up. So for your listeners and for your viewers, my course is very affordable. There's also a payment plan. I made it affordable for the masses. And it's accumulation of everything I do with my clients for getting rid of anxiety, but not only getting rid of anxiety, we will get rid of overwhelm, procrastination, and we will rewire your brain to eliminate or considerably decrease stress, depending on how much not stress you want to have. People think that having not stress equals like being lazy. You can be an A-type personality, highly productive and out of stress. And that's what I want for my A-type personalities. And also, you will learn techniques for being able to implement healthy habits that stick and increased confidence. So there's a lot that you get out of my course. I'd love to give you guys affiliate commissions so that your listeners and viewers, basically, when they buy the course, are helping themselves, but they're also supporting the content that you're putting out there. So your affiliate link will be in the show notes for your viewers and listeners.
Yes, we will. It will be in the show notes. Thank you, Ashley, so much. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
And
thank you. Nice meeting you.
Thanks for coming on. We'll be in touch and hopefully talk to you again soon.
All right, sounds great. This was wonderful today, and you guys are doing such great work. So I love your show.
I'm excited to be on your show soon too, and
we'll have some fun.
Yes, we will. Thanks, Ashley.
And take care.
Bye.
Bye.